Hey everyone, and welcome to the supplemental video on Bitcoin. Now, this is a topic that quite a few of you have asked me to talk about, so I'm going to go a little bit more in depth than some of the other videos on cryptocurrency, and I'm really going to break this up into two parts by discussing what cryptocurrency is, specifically Bitcoin, and then we're going to talk about the market and future of cryptocurrency. So let's just break it all back down. What is a cryptocurrency? It really just in theory works the exact same way as money, except with code instead of physical bills. A string of code is just designated as a coin and then can be traded by sending people the code. So if I had, a dollar bill, when I want to make a transaction, I give the dollar bill to somebody else. But with cryptocurrency, I just give that string of code to somebody else. But, that sounds like it's a faulty system. So it's really important to keep track of the code and where it's going. And that's how blockchain technology comes in. Now, blockchain technology is one of the biggest underrated transaction developments in the last 30 years. And through this, we're going to talk about why. Blockchain technology is just a digital ledger that records cryptocurrency transactions in a cryptocurrency system. And it derives its name from the way that it stores information and it really is not just limited to cryptocurrency. More specifically, blockchain is just a type of database. So anytime something needs to be added to that database, it creates a new, what we call block of code. And this block this code gets pieced together within the blocks, and then the blocks get pieced into the existing chain to make the blockchain. And so, what's really important to characterize blockchains is that they're extremely different in the way that data is stored. So instead of just making a large table, which is how traditional databases are, you think of like an Excel database or an Access database, it's really just a large table that has references to each other. However, with blockchain, it is a large set of independent blocks, which means that the storage of information is a lot more efficient and secure. And that is because you can edit the blockchain by editing individual blocks and accessing individual blocks rather than the entire database as a whole. And so, what this also enables is for blockchains to be decentralized because what you can do is create irreversible timestamps based on when a block is added or edited to the existing chain, and then you can close off access to that block and use that timestamp as a proof of entry of the block to prevent any future meddling with it. And so it means that it's impossible to tamper with the blockchain. And it also means that you can close off certain blocks while opening up specific blocks. So this construction of blockchain technology is what makes decentralized cryptocurrency possible. So each time a coin is traded, it is done on an existing blockchain infrastructure. The ledger records a string of code changing possession and locks in the code to the new owner in a digital wallet. So as I said, blockchain is not just limited to cryptocurrency. There are large swaths of alternative uses. For example, tracking food shipments. A former professor of mine is working on tracking cattle and beef sources so that you can understand where your beef is coming from, which has limitless potential, specifically when dealing with, possible like contamination or etc. But when we look at the blockchain technology in the frame of cryptocurrency, it makes cryptocurrency extremely secure because once a transaction is recorded in the digital ledger, it's done. And it can never be altered. And so it makes these cryptocurrency transactions extremely secure as well as anonymous because everything is done in the digital space. So that means you don't need like proof of identification or otherwise to trade cryptocurrency. And so this graph right here really shows how the Bitcoin process works. So first, a new transaction is entered. The transaction is then given to peer-to-peer computers around the world, and these computers solve equations to confirm the validity of the transaction, then bundle them together into a block, and then the block is entered into the existing blockchain and then closed off. And that is what ends the transaction. So now let's dive deeper into Bitcoin specifically because this is the cryptocurrency that everyone thinks about when you bring up cryptocurrency in the first place. And it was the very first cryptocurrency developed, and that was made possible by the development of blockchain technology. And it's a decentralized currency that was originally authored actually as a centralized currency by Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009, but then in 2010 he gave it to Gavin Andresen, and it was actually Andresen who decentralized the currency. And it was really just designed to be as a proof of concept design for peer-to-peer transactions with a cryptocurrency. So it wasn't necessarily designed to, be a future international legal tender or anything. It was really meant to be a proof of concept of the validity of cryptocurrency. So there's a big missing piece here in that it's what a lot of people like to skip over because it's kind of tricky to understand, but it's referred to a lot, and that is how the ledger is updated because it's not automated. It's actually updated by mining. And what Bitcoin miners do is they create blocks with 1 megabyte of transaction information. These blocks are not automatically updated, and the size and amount of transactions in a block depends on the aggregate transaction size. So if somebody sent a person 1 Bitcoin, it's a lot smaller than if they sent them 1,000 Bitcoin. And so the number of transactions that go into one block can vary quite a bit. And these Bitcoin miners are who creates blocks and adds them to the blockchain. And to get uh, a block into the blockchain, a Bitcoin miner must randomly generate and come up with a 64-digit hexadecimal number that is less than or equal to what we call the hash, which is just a target number. So you have to be less than or equal to the hash. And high-powered computers are what are needed to come up with the hash or the guess for the hash because this is all just guesswork. They say it's a complex math problem, but it really isn't. It's just a fancy word to say that you're using a computer to generate guesses. And it's really difficult to do because you're actually on an individual try when you're guessing this hexadecimal key, you're actually 50 times more likely to win the Powerball jackpot than get the correct guess of the hash on the first try. Additionally, the way that Bitcoin was created, every 2016 blocks that are added to the blockchain, the difficulty increases. So just last year, uh, it was a 1 in 16 trillion chance of getting the hash correct on an individual try. Now it is up to 1 in 20 trillion. And so, additionally, the difficulty rate can actually be adjusted so that uh, the rates of new blockchains being added to, or the rates of new blocks being added to the blockchain are kept constant. And then if a miner successfully solves the hash first, they are received with a new Bitcoin. That's the other big caveat with crypto mining is that you have to be the first to come up with a correct guess. And there's no, tiebreaker of saying, oh, well, I was closer to the hash, so I get the Bitcoin. It's just whoever gets at or under the hash gets to add the block to the chain and gets the reward. So there's a lot of intensive computational power that goes into this race to come up with the hash first. And it's because of how much work it takes to come up with the hash. That is why, for example, it made big news that Elon Musk stopped using Bitcoin as payment for Tesla transactions because this is a high powered, intensive process that takes a lot of computational power, well beyond what your computational power is on your laptop to get this crypto mining on a scale that it can be a profitable business. But additionally, when you get that reward does not stay constant. So right now, the reward is if every block that you add to the blockchain, you get 6.25 Bitcoin. But every 210,000 blocks, the reward for adding a new block is halved. And the last time that it was halved was actually in March of 2020. So the good news is that if any of you are interested in ever going into Bitcoin mining, this takes about every 4 years for the reward rate to have. But the idea is to make the new currency supply of Bitcoin predictable and limit potential inflation. By definition, Bitcoin advertises itself as a deflationary coin because eventually the supply of Bitcoin will go away but at the same time demand is going to increase, meaning that it's trying to coax people to believe that uh, if you hold on to Bitcoin, it will appreciate in value over time as the scarcity levels are reached through barriers to new Bitcoin being added to the economy, which is done by regulating what you receive as a reward for crypto mining. But let's now look at the Bitcoin market specifically. So this is a graph that if any of you have taken a peek at Bitcoin, you have probably seen. This is the Bitcoin value specifically since 2015. And it went from really, nothing, it was $107 at the start of 2015 to over $60,000 a coin. And I'm making this video on July 8th where it has just dropped 10% again, so it's now down to $32,860. So that's one Bitcoin is $32,860. Remember, with currency, we're always talking about conversion rates. But that begs the question because this doesn't look like a normal currency market, right? So we have to ask ourselves, what is this? It's definitely some sort of financial asset, but is it a currency? Is it a storage of value? Is it just a gamble? It's certainly not equity, even though it's traded like an equity. So it's really hard to pinpoint what this market is that we're even looking at. And that also begs the question, what are people investing off of? Are they all speculating on the long-term growth of usage of Bitcoin? Are you trying to hope that your Bitcoin is going to appreciate in value over time? Is it going to, depreciate so that when it's used as legal tender someday, you have more money than what you invested in? Are you just investing because you were told to? Are you scared of missing out? Or is this really just a giant pyramid scheme where every person that invests in Bitcoin wants two more people to invest so that their currency investment can appreciate over time? So, and another kind of weird caveat with the Bitcoin market is that you're not actually most people investing in Bitcoin as a currency because if you're investing in Bitcoin on an app such as Robinhood, you don't actually have a Bitcoin wallet. So you don't own Bitcoin. You cannot use your Bitcoin to make transactions. So, if you had a Bitcoin in your Robinhood account, and this was before Tesla stopped allowing Bitcoin as payment, you would not be able to transfer Bitcoins from your Robinhood account to Tesla. Instead, what you're doing is you're telling Robinhood to add Bitcoins to their portfolio, their Bitcoin wallet, and then if you want them to sell, you're telling them to get it rid of out of their wallet. So you don't actually have ownership of that Bitcoin. You're just telling them to add it into their wallet. So in that sense, it's certainly not a currency that you're investing in. It's just a storage of value or otherwise. Um, so it's a very weird market, which means that a lot of financial experts just completely steer clear of it unless they're trying to have fun with it or are trying to just use it as a storage of value. Additionally, preventing the long-term growth of Bitcoin's usage is the volatility. Because if we look at this graph, if this was the value of the US dollar, I'm sure not a lot of you would be happy with it. Since the beginning of 2021, the value of Bitcoin has halved. If I told you that in the next 6 months, the total value of your US dollars would have, not a lot of you would be happy with that. In fact, I'm sure all of you would be quite upset. And so this volatility is a major concern for the long-term use of Bitcoin beyond just being a storage of value. And while the designation of Bitcoin and mining is to make it deflationary, it was designed to be so at a stable rate. And it's certainly deflationary. And in this case, deflationary means that it's growing in value. But is it stable? No, not at all. So this volatility is a major problem and concern for long-term cryptocurrency users that are hoping to use it as legal tender eventually. And this is true even with illegal transactions, which was one of the major skeptics concerns about Bitcoin, because this anonymous decentralized system means that there's no tracking of transactions, meaning it's very easy to do illegal transactions with Bitcoin. These illegal transactions are no longer using Bitcoin because it is so unstable and volatile. Nobody wants to be holding on to Bitcoin as a form of currency, illegal or otherwise. So while it may be fun to gamble on, there are a lot of problems with establishing it as a real form of money. And so that means the long-term future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general is quite unclear. There have been a few different solutions proposed, and so it's an interesting conversation to see what the future of cryptocurrency should be. One of the simple, solutions is just to wait out the volatility and the hype and see what happens. Once this cryptocurrency fad, this meme fad, this Wall Street bets fad dies down, we should see a reduction in the volatility, because prior to 2017, its growth was actually quite stable. An alternative one is to develop a centralized form of cryptocurrency using similar technology to control the market. And this could possibly even be done by central banks. And central banks in China, Japan, and Europe are actually doing exactly this. In particular, China is starting to roll out their centralized cryptocurrency into test markets to try and use it for certain transactions this year. Another alternative is to keep the decentralized structure of cryptocurrency, but then to peg it against a different currency. And for example, that is what Tether does. Tether pegs itself against the US dollar. Now, there are certain other concerns with Tether, because it's no longer backed purely by US currency, but that's for a different discussion. And I've actually linked an article for you for that in the fireside chat articles. But it is quite interesting to think about what the future of cryptocurrency is, because while it does have a lot of merit and there could be substantial moves towards a more cryptocurrency based money system in the future, it does seem likely that whatever that market would look like, it would be radically different from the current Bitcoin market because of all these problems that we've brought up. But with that, if you have any further questions on cryptocurrency, let me know. Otherwise, as I said, there's a couple other cryptocurrency articles, so you can go ahead and read those.